I'm out in Colorado, Garden of the Gods, checking out this new Thypoch Eureka 50mm collapsible lens. It is an f2 and really, really small once it's collapsed. Kind of classic look here. Now this is a pre-production lens, so the materials are slightly different than the final product is going to be, but I guess all the optics are as they should be. And as for the optics, they're really good. Actually surprised at how well this thing performs. I've been out here mostly shooting all this stuff at f5.6 and all of the landscapes and stuff, and then anything closer, want to get a little bit of shallow depth of field, been shooting at f2. And as you can see in some of these samples, the bokeh is pretty cool. You definitely are seeing some chromatic aberration, and you're seeing a lot of kind of like swirling on the bokeh and things that are a little bit more reminiscent of a vintage lens. But I think this lens, to me, feels kind of like a mix between vintage and modern. So it's kind of the perfect lens to come out in 2024. If you're someone that is looking for something that has a vintage look and feel, but also performs well on, you know, higher megapixel cameras, you're not gonna get a lot of that like really, really soft glow and a lot of the other issues that you would usually run into on lenses like this. And obviously you're getting some really kind of cool styling in a very, very minimal form factor as well. So here's what this thing looks like when it's fully collapsed. And then if you take off the included hood, we're getting really, really small here. So putting this in a small bag, traveling, all that kind of stuff, makes it really, really nice. And then once you pop this thing open, yeah, gives a really, really nice vintage kind of aesthetic. And I actually don't have all of the specs on this thing, but I'm gonna show real quick the aperture blades because there are a ton of them. I don't really want to count them, and I'm sure if I have the information, I'll put it here, but there are a lot. Now, speaking of the aperture as well, it's not clicked, so you're not gonna get any of that kind of stuff, but it does have a classic little infinity lock here as well for all of your focusing. And it does seem like it goes to 0.7 meters, even though the indicator here ends at 1 meter, but obviously goes past that, so I'm assuming that's what that is. All right, just got back. I wanted to kind of do a couple little follow-up things on this lens, and especially after processing the images, and obviously you have seen a lot of these, give you some more thoughts about the feel and all of those kind of things. So one of the things, the first of which being that I've never owned another collapsible lens like this. So it being a vintage inspired design is definitely something that's going on here. It's not necessarily like fully a vintage lens, obviously, because it has some of those characteristics, especially wide open at f2, but it's still pretty darn sharp. I think a lens like this works really well, and this is just like my own random thoughts here, but especially on something like the M10 and obviously like the M9, things like that, this lens is going to be plenty sharp for those systems. Now, using this at full resolution on the M11, that's where you start to see more of that kind of stuff as well. But I shot most of those examples at the, let's see, 36 megapixel setting, so like the medium raw. And I felt like it was very, very sharp, both wide open at f2 and then also at f5.6. If you look at those, I mean, just stop down to f5.6, a lot of those landscapes look really, really good. And there's been a lot of time, I've had this lens for a while now, and so I've shot some images around just my hometown of Tacoma here, and it does a really, really good job. Even at f2 wide open, there is plenty of information, but I love that it has this vintage look and aesthetic, but also gives you a little bit of that character. So it's definitely not going to be it's not going to beat the Apple lenses from either Leica or Voigtlander. Now, this video isn't sponsored, but it is supported by all of you who actually subscribe to this channel. So if you have not subscribed to this channel and like the videos I'm putting out, it's definitely free to you. You can bail out at any time if you want to, but the vast majority of people that watch these videos aren't actually subscribed, and it is legitimately a massive help to have some higher subscriber numbers on this platform. So if you wouldn't mind liking the video and subscribing to this channel if you haven't already, that would be super, super helpful and allow me to make more videos like this moving forward. This already looks like a film camera anyway, but when you add a lens like this, it just adds to that look. And so I found that I got a few compliments just when I was walking around with this lens. I had someone that was saying like, oh, it's cool to see people still out there shooting film. And obviously I'm not gonna correct them or anything, but it does obviously add to that mystique, which I think makes people feel a little bit more disarmed in that way. You're not, you know, you look more like you're going out to make art or something because you look like you're making some weird project because it is just a lens that looks old. But the nice thing, obviously, is that you don't have to worry about all of the other things that can come into play when using an actual vintage lens because this thing is brand spanking new. So to sum this thing up, I think that it gives you most of the things I actually really enjoy about vintage lenses while giving you like a pretty modern look actually out of this thing. Again, I actually don't know how many elements are in here or anything like that, or what type of lens design, if it's like a sonar design or, you know, whatever that is. But I can say that it gives you enough of a vintage look that wide open, it looks really cool and it kind of fits with the lens and what it looks like. But also stop down, obviously, even on a higher resolution sensor, you're getting plenty of detail. And so for street photography, for landscapes even, it totally did the job. So overall, just another really, really cool lens. I love that there's another player in the game right now. And while I don't know what this lens is going to cost, if it's anything like the Samara line, it's going to be relatively inexpensive. And for the performance, I think that if you're interested in a lens like this, but don't want to actually go full vintage, it's probably a pretty cool little idea. So thanks again to Thypoch for sending this out. It's been fun to have another, you know, demo lens that isn't even out to the public to play around with. Obviously, if you're interested, you can check out the links down below to see all the information about availability and pricing and things for this camera. If you're interested in my video on the Thypoch Samara, you can check that out up here. Check out my thoughts on more Leica cameras and lenses up here, and I will see you all in one of those videos.